2 years before the cycle came over.
Look, everybody's interested in Act 2 in this play, right? But you have to look at Act 1 in order to really begin to assess how to think about Act 2.
Fine, that's why I'm asking. So
Yeah.
2 years
How
before you
about
came
Act
over.
3, John?
Yes, the stuff in between too.
Golitsyn's behavior, you know, after the HSCA and so on, when he's telling the world that Euro-communism is a clever Soviet device and all that sort of thing, and maybe, you know, you've changed my mind here, and I now believe that Nosenko was a false defector. But does that really mean that we should think Golitsyn really was a true one? Because his behavior goes way beyond the case. He was with the support of Angleton and Edward J. Epstein. They were putting out poison, really. I think there's no other word for it, poison. Seeing I have the floor, I want to ask 2 other questions. One is, we both met Nechepurenko. I maybe spent more time than you with him. I think his book was a controlled release. I asked him if he knew. I asked him some questions about the Federal Directorate of Intelligence in Mexico, and he said, "Oh, it's in my book." And he opened up the book and he looked at it and said, "Oh, they took it out," he said. So. And one of the things that I found most interesting, he said that there was no switchboard in the Soviet consulate on Saturdays, which meant that the phone call on Tuesday was a falsified phone call, which he did not denounce in his book. On the contrary, he was creating a much stronger Oswald relationship to the embassy than had existed before. I think that's fake, frankly. I don't think Oswald did visit the embassy. So I don't believe in Nechepurenko, and I'm a bit surprised you do.
Well, I'm not aware what you said. In fact, that Tuesday call is one thing, but the call on Saturday.
There was no call on Saturday.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
A little louder.
I agree. There was no call on Saturday. They were getting ready to play a volleyball game. There was no phone call. It was all Hollywood DreamWorks. So why do you think that the Tuesday call was suspicious?
The Tuesday call said I spoke to somebody in the embassy on Saturday by phone. So he didn't.
But that's
According to
consistent.
Nechepurenko.
That's consistent. The text of that is consistent with the false phone call on Saturday, is it not?
I think there's 2 different genuses of false phone
Yeah,
calls.
exactly.
Yeah.
One is a call with a lie in it. The other is an alleged call that did not, in fact, take place.
Right.
The Tuesday call didn't take place.
No, the Tuesday call did take
Right,
place,
okay.
and the man who is, I'm sure, not the Oswald we think of,
Right.
is lying. And then, by the way, it's just a question. Are you absolutely convinced that the man who was Lee Harvey Oswald in Russia was in fact the man picked up in Dallas in '63?
Not at all. And I've gone over to the view in Mexico City that maybe it's him, maybe it's not. So I'm not going to be dogmatic about it.
Okay.
He could have been there and impersonated, or could have been not there at all.
I think he was. There is a fragment of a release which says that the man who made the phone call spoke horrible Russian and English.
Mm-hmm.
So I do not think that was the man in Dallas. And I frankly think if this is completely anecdotal, but I once had an hour-long conversation with Marina where I was trying my hardest not to bring up the assassination. We were talking about literature, and I said, did she like Henry James? And she said, you'd never heard of Henry James. Who is Henry James? And I said, oh, he's sort of like the American Turgenev. And she said, oh, Turgenev. Alec really loved Turgenev. The man who checked out books from the New Orleans Public Library was not a lover of Turgenev. Okay.
Can I ask you a question about your conversation with Marina? Was that
I don't know, circa 19, I mean, well past the events.
Oh, yeah,
obviously.
there was a conference in '93, I believe, in
Okay.
Cambridge.
At Harvard.
Yes, but no, then about 2 years later, it was November the 22nd, my phone rang, and it was Marina. She phoned me. We talked for 20 minutes at the conference, and, you know, I think she's quite well educated. I think she had a fairly dim view of a lot of the people at the conference, and I guess she didn't have quite as dim a view as me, because she phoned me, and we talked for half an hour. She said, I wish I could share a drink with you. I said, go and pour yourself one, I'll pour myself one. And it was after that the Turgenev thing came up. Now, maybe I'm wrong to attach importance to that. I'm a bit stymied by the book that his friend in Minsk, what's his name? It's a very credible book.
Titovitz?
Yes, and I think that my own feeling is it's a very informative book, but also I think a controlled book, that he's telling enough to make us realize there was a KGB interest, but I think that he never says explicitly that the man he knew in Minsk was the man in Dallas. But you know, obviously he's making us assume that it was. And I think maybe the purpose of that book was to make us think. I read that book over Minsk, by the way. I was hoping to speak to him when I was in Russia. I didn't have time. So there I was on a plane, and just by total coincidence, I looked at the map. We were exactly over Minsk.
You convinced that Golitsyn's bona fides?
Yeah, I think he probably is bona fide. But I think Peter's point was that, you know, once you're here for so many years and he's getting all this special treatment, right, with Angleton, you know, he's looking out for his own interests, you know. But I believe his initial debriefings, don't you agree with that? Or
I don't know.
well, it certainly is that
I absolutely believe you that Nosenko was sent to discredit Golitsyn. That part I think is rock hard.